everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Chris Dashew, and I'm joined to close out Patricia Arquette by my close friend and the co-host of the one-season show. What the fuck is your name?
My name is Jess Byard, and I'm at your house right now.
Oh my god. Ask the question. I wish I could do it as well as Robert Blake does, but man.
I wish we could do anything as well as Robert Blake does.
Like get away with murder?
Just anything, really.
Yeah, kill your wife and then get acquitted of it.
Right.
So we are here to talk about a director that I know Jess is super excited to talk about, Mr. David Lynch. I also am super excited to talk about this film because we did David Lynch January a couple years back on the podcast, and we did not cover this movie. I think we meant to, and we never got around to it, or something happened, and that's a bummer because I absolutely love this movie. So kind of bearing the lead right there off the bat, we are going to be talking about David Lynch's 1997 film featuring Patricia Arquette, Lost Highway.
Featuring a lot of Patricia Arquette.
Featuring a lot, boy. Ooh, Jesus.
We've met before, haven't we?
I don't think so.
At your house, don't you remember?
No, I don't.
As a matter of fact, I'm there right now.
That's crazy, man.
Call me.
I like that.
I think there's no such thing as a bad coincidence.
I like to remember things my own way, not necessarily the way they happened.
Someone broke in and taped us while we slept.
Is that you? Are both of them you?
We have to get out of here.
Why didn't you tell me anything?
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
If I ever found out somebody was making out with her,
He'll kill us.
I told you I was here.
How'd you do that?
Ask me.
So the film is directed by David Lynch, written by David Lynch and Barry Gifford. Barry Gifford actually wrote the book Wild at Heart, which is another David Lynch film. It stars the aforementioned Patricia Arquette, Bill Pullman, a guy whose name I still can't get over, Balthazar Getty. It's just like the weirdest. It's like such a weird name. I don't know why I always get hung up on it, but Balthazar
It's like he
Getty.
needed to be an actor or the Antichrist, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so trying to break down the synopsis of this film, I feel like would be doing the film a massive disservice. But let's just say the film is about a man who murders his wife. And then maybe he loses his wife, and then he loses his mind.
Right.
Again,
He goes into a, what was it, a psychogenic fugue.
Boy, we watched the same videos, didn't we?
We did.
A psychogenic fugue state.
Right, which is basically just psychogenic amnesia.
Yeah. He is essentially finding a way to distance himself from what he did, almost to the point of convincing himself that it didn't happen. Which, let's be honest, that's a trope in horror movies from way back when. Oh, I didn't realize I was the killer. I mean, it's, you don't give a name to it, but that's what that is.
Right, and I mean, this movie is overwhelmingly like a neo-noir. So, of course, it's like, oh, there's a murder, and we gotta figure out who did it, and there's gonna be, some twists and turns along the way.
A lot of twists and a lot of turns. So, Jess, I'm curious. You're here finally talking about David Lynch. I'm assuming your favorite director. Maybe
one of.
What did you think coming back to Lost Highway? When was the first time you watched it, and what is it like coming back to it?
So the first time that I watched Lost Highway, I was, I think, probably 17, and I was at a it was actually pretty fitting. I was doing a film study program in San Francisco for the summer, and with the Art Institute there, which is kind of a thing still, but they're kind of shitty now. But at the time, it was interesting.
There were probably more. There's probably more heroin needles all over the place now.
Oh God. But so I actually just we had a day off or whatever. I was done with my classes for that day, and there was a common room with movies, of course, because it's a film study thing. So of course there's going to be movies, and of course there's going to be David Lynch movies. And so I actually watched Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive for the first time back to back that day. And I, at the time, didn't really get either movie because I was 17 and I never watched anything like that before. But I liked Mulholland Drive better. And that remains to be the case. I am actually not a huge fan of Lost Highway. Ba ba ba.
Still? Even after watching it? Wow. I'm kind of surprised.
I know. I was keeping it in this whole time before this podcast because I was like, I don't want to. I know he loves it, so.
I sure do, don't I?
Uh-huh.
Well, see, here's the thing. I've never seen Mulholland Drive, though, so.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh my. Well, you've seen this movie, which is essentially just the rough draft for Mulholland Drive.
What I've picked up was that this is reverse Mulholland Drive?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense in a way. Mulholland Drive is even more, confused and dreamy than this movie is. And honestly, there's a lot more going on in Mulholland Drive, too. There's many more characters. They actually evolve more in the movie than the characters in this movie do, in my opinion. But
and Mulholland Drive was originally going to be a Twin Peaks spinoff, right?
Right, which, and David Lynch has confirmed that Lost Highway is in the same universe as Twin Peaks, which here is an observation. When I first watched this, I was 17 and I never watched Twin Peaks, so I knew nothing about it. Now, going back, being a huge Twin Peaks fan, and knowing that, they're in the same universe, I pick up a lot more stuff. There's a lot more allusions to the Black Lodge and things going on there that I think make this movie make more sense in hindsight.
Sure.
If you are piecing those things together. And I honestly don't think this movie's that complicated. I think that it's actually, the plot is so simple that it feels kind of disconnected.
Yeah, I would
feels
agree
a little
with that.
Dreamy, that there's just not enough filling it in, so you kind of constantly feel like you're missing something because you feel like you have to fill everything in. And that's a David Lynch thing, and I think ultimately David Lynch is so averse to planting information in the audience's head or, pushing them in a way or a different way that I think in this movie in particular, and in other things too, but in this movie in particular, he holds back so much that I just don't find this, I don't think this movie needs to be 2.5 hours long, and I am just not as engaged or involved in what's going on as I am in other, David Lynch pieces.
Sure. No, I can completely understand and frankly sympathize with that thinking. The reason I like this movie is a lot of different things kind of meshed together. It's not just one thing. It is David Lynch, which I love. It is, Bill Pullman, which is great. It has Patricia Arquette, who is really great in here doing I wouldn't say a dual role, but the film would lead you to believe it is a dual role. But it is one of those films where when I watched it the first time, I had watched a lot of other David Lynch films, and look, he has a very polarizing filmography of films. Mm-hmm. You've got stuff like Dune, which Dune is its own thing. Dune
is a problem made by a variety of resources.
It is a problem, and that is not. It's not entirely.
It's not
David
wholly
Lynch's
his fault.
No. I have yet to watch Wild at Heart. I have seen Blue Velvet, though, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I've seen Inland Empire, and I've seen Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. This is my favorite of the ones that I've seen, mind you. If I get around to seeing Wild at Heart, which I've heard
Eraserhead.
I've seen Eraserhead too, yeah. But I mean, I don't think you can have an opinion on David Lynch without seeing Eraserhead, since...
I mean, fair.
I mean, some directors...
It is pretty much like the movie.
Well, some directors' first films don't matter.
Or don't stand the test of time.
Yeah, and Eraserhead stands the test of time and then some.
Oh, yeah.
So...
For that particular film audience, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, David Lynch... Like, the thing about David Lynch is he never really strayed too far from what Eraserhead was and the themes of Eraserhead.
Great.
Right,
that's partly why I love David Lynch, and that he is wholly him. Where he's like, I'm just making these things. I don't care how you interpret them. I'm never going to tell you what they mean. Because honestly, half the time when you watch interviews with him, and you and I watched the same, I'm sure, interview on YouTube, where he's talking about how he doesn't really remember how Lost Highway really, like, came together and how, like, they wrote it in a month. And honestly, it feels like it. This whole movie... The dialogue bothers me so much, and I know that a lot of it's all intentional, and I get that. It's just not, I don't enjoy it this time around as much. Sure. The dialogue gets on my nerves sometimes with how stiff and, like, weird it is.
But if you buy into what the kind of interpretation of the second act of the film is, it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, I understand not being a fan of those oddly stilted dialogue.
Dude, also taupe tan beige, like that's the whole fucking color scheme of this movie. This is one of his ugliest movies to look at, and I am saying I would much rather look at Eraserhead any day than stare at that fucking house that they live in. Good God.
Well, and this film was meant to be filmed in black and white, which
would have probably
sense.
Been better.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see a black and white version of the film. I mean, I'm sure you can.
I'm sure one exists.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, no, we're more focused on Twilight Zone 2019 being in black and white because that's more important. But I feel like Lost Highway in black and white would alleviate that problem. However, it is a film that is very hard to get into from the outset only because what David Lynch is going for is a very... It's not weird, but he's look, I think we need to have this conversation about David Lynch, and it comes back to another director that we've talked about in the last month twice now, Tarantino. People seem to think Tarantino's movies are like the end-all, be-all of high art and high cinema, high American cinema. And his films are not at all trying to do anything interesting or different. They are just taking someone else's ideas and mashing them up into something that Tarantino calls his own. And something about David Lynch that I know doesn't get noticed by a lot of mainstream film watchers because these films that he makes are not accessible to mainstream film watchers except for maybe Wild at Heart from what I've heard, is that he's really trying to do something different. And
I don't know if Wild at Heart is accessible for mainstream audiences.
It's more accessible than this.
Yeah, I guess because it's higher energy and it's more recognizable.
Right, but this is like this is pretty out there. You know, I mean, David Lynch is not known for making mainstream films. I mean, look, at one point David Lynch was asked to direct Return of the Jedi, okay? That was a thing that happened. He didn't.
I wish that happened in whatever universe that did happen. Yeah. That's amazing.
Whatever universe that happened in would be the universe I want to live in because that would have been amazing. But I mean, look, if we're looking at his filmography, films like Inland Empire, which is almost Lost Highway dialed up a little bit more.
I know, I can't wait.
It is a 3-hour film as opposed to a 2.5-hour film. Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me, which you almost can't watch without watching Twin Peaks. The director's cut, alleviates some of the problems, but it is still a very hard film to get into. I guess maybe.
Well,
Blue
I mean,
Velvet?
I guess you can't watch it and really hope to understand it without watching Twin Peaks. I think that if you are somebody who's seeking out movies like David Lynch, that kind of thing, then you would just kind of enjoy it as a weird thing. But no, I agree. Blue Velvet is probably pretty accessible.
Right. It's pretty straightforward. It is again kind of neo-noir. It's got K-Mac in it.
Which I love Blue Velvet.
Yeah, Blue Velvet's great. I mean, it's got K-Mac in it, so, you know.
Oh.
Good old
handsome K-Mac.
Mr. Kyle, I was the bad guy in the Flintstones, McLaughlin.
Hey, I fucking love that movie. Okay?
I love that movie, too. That movie's great.
And I love him in it.
I know. Oh God, what's it? Cliff Rockstone or something
like that.
Something just so bullshit. It's great, but he's great in that, and Kyle MacLachlan's great in everything. I mean, there's a reason David Lynch.
He's great in Desperate Housewives.
Never, I've never seen.
It was a guilty pleasure show.
It was on the air for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean,
and I watched every season. But anyway,
and look, David Lynch made a Disney movie. I mean,
that's true. He did.
The Straight Story is a Disney film made by David Lynch.
I mean, The Elephant Man is pretty accessible.
Right. But like at the end of the day, David Lynch, he doesn't go out of his way to be weird. That's just who he is. Like, right. And that's what's so great about him when we talk about like true American cinema auteurs. David Lynch is in that conversation, and it bums me out when people are like, oh my God, Quentin Tarantino's amazing, or so-and-so is amazing. I'm like, guys, you haven't even really scratched the surface of what it means to watch films made by American auteurs. I'm not saying that I have the biggest knowledge I have the best words, best knowledge, when it comes to American film auteurs, but David Lynch has to be in that conversation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he is unapologetically him. And I mean, yes.
To a fault, almost.
To a fault. And so is Tarantino. And so is every auteur, quite frankly. They all do everything on their movies because they feel like they are the only people who can. So that ego is massive. And the thing about Tarantino is that it shows. The thing about David Lynch is it doesn't. David Lynch's personality, everything that like comes from David Lynch, even his movies, everything is reserved and with little spurts of energy. And that is him. Tarantino he wants you to know that it's Tarantino, and that's
so much so that it's the ninth film from Quentin Tarantino. Like, dude, we get it. We get it, dude.
But speaking of Tarantino, I do have to say that Bill Pullman is doing his best Michael Madsen in this movie.
I guess that's what look, Bill Pullman let's talk about Bill Pullman, because I think this may be one of the first times I've had an opportunity to really talk about how much I love Bill Pullman. He is a fantastic actor. Like, absolutely one of my favorite character actors. He was in Newsies, which, if you've never seen Newsies, I'm not going to say it's amazing because it's really bad. But
I've honestly only seen it once, like when I was a kid. I don't remember.
It's so much fun. And look, like the weird thing about Bill Pullman is he is an actor who most people will know him as the president from Independence Day, which is fine because, let's be honest here, that speech made by a fake president makes me wish he was the real president as opposed to what we have now.
Well, man.
But I love Bill Pullman. But yeah, this version of him in this film is very subdued.
He's had a very interesting career. I mean,
people know him from Casper, probably, right? I mean, that's
what I knew him from as a kid. Like, that was probably the first thing I ever saw him in. And I mean, then he's in like shit like The Serpent and the Rainbow, which I love, and Brain Dead, which is fucking weird. And then but mostly he's just kind of like that guy in that movie that kind of always isn't there, like the Bill Pullman, Bill Paxton problem.
I mean, is there? Let's be honest here. Bill Paxton is a much more recognizable character actor.
I would agree, but I think that's what everybody, like, they always replace Bill Pullman or anything that Bill Pullman is in. They just assume that it was Bill Paxton instead. That's the name that comes to mind.
Well, this was the first film he made after Independence Day, and like that couldn't be farther from.
Oh God, no!
Right, like but the issue that I have with this movie, is for as much as I like it is a long film. Almost too long. I would say it's probably 10-15 minutes too long. There are some things that you need to take out. I'd say
it's about 25 minutes too long.
I mean, but we're in the same camp here. Like, it is too long.
Yes, and it's too long, and it's noticeably long, and I get that, and there's a whole meme of David Lynch of who the fuck cares how long a scene is, and I get that, and I do like it in some things, but here I don't, because to me, like, the reason I like it in other things like Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet and other movies is because they're more visually engaging and I enjoy looking at them. This movie is ugly and I don't enjoy looking at it. And so when we have these extended scenes in this fucking living room that's just like brown on top of gray on just weird, gross looking colors, it's just, it almost gets on my nerves that I have to look at it for so long.
But can we also not agree on the fact that the leads in this film are not likable at all? Which
no one is likable in this movie.
Right.
Everybody is shitty.
Well, the only person that's mildly likable is Robert Loggia, but that's also because Robert Loggia is just, I guess, just
chewing scenery the whole time.
Lynch just turned him loose and was like, just do your thing. You motherfucker! It's like, oh man, like, oh shit. Like, Loggia is just going for it, which is fine.
He's having a great time. He's doing a Dennis Hopper.
Yeah, it's great.
Velvet. Like, yes, he is the most energy in this movie, and when he's in it, that's great. And I love Robert Blake. He's fantastic in it. He's not in it enough, in my opinion.
Well, let me put it this way. I think if he was in it too much, we'd be saying the opposite.
I mean, fair. I guess the most interesting thing to me about this movie is the stuff that has to do with the sort of Black Lodge overtones. Where, every time there's that big flash of lightning or whatever, that's always kind of what I see symbolized there. And there's also the giant red curtains that I totally forgot about that were all over this movie.
Yeah, look, Lynch, with the whole Lynch universe thing, like, I guess because he said it's a thing, it is a thing. But right. I don't, personally, as someone who's a fan of Twin Peaks, and I'm talking Twin Peaks season 1 and 3, not season 2, because season 2 is bad. It just is. I mean, I don't think I don't think anyone is going to go to bat for season 2.
I mean, it's not, great, but I still enjoy it.
Well, I mean, I enjoy it because I get to see more of Kyle MacLachlan, but, like, let's not pretend that season 2 can hold a candle to the first or third season.
Right.
I don't need this to be connected to Twin Peaks. Like, I don't need anything to be connected to Twin Peaks. I
don't need it, but I don't hate it. Honestly, it's what makes it most interesting to me, and I would rather there be more of that because I keep thinking, oh god, I'd just rather be watching something else. So
sure, fair.
Twin Peaks is there.
But, like, the way I interpret this movie is probably sans Twin Peaks stuff. It's probably the same way I think anyone who kind of just does any cursory amount of reading about the film interprets it, which is Bill Pullman murders his wife, and then...
Question mark?
I'm in the camp that he kills her. And then he goes to
probably.
jail. He goes to jail, and then he has a psychotic break, and that's where he turns into Balthazar Getty's Pete. And that whole thing is just him, with the, his, the ego, him, this is what I wish I was. This is what I wish I could be, what I used to be, because now
So this is just his mental fantasy.
Right. And then reality is bringing itself back in through the id, which is Robert
Yeah, because
Blake's
he goes to death row.
Right. And at the end of the film, he dies. As far as I'm concerned, that's the way I interpret it. When he's driving down the highway and he starts wigging out again, his face starts distorting and blowing up like Ronnie Cox in Total Recall. He's dying and getting electrocuted, but he's in that psychogenic fugue state where he is dissociating himself with what he's done, and because he's doing that, he can't come to terms with cutting up his wife. And maybe he didn't cut her up because, again, the way I interpret the first 30 minutes of the film is that everything that takes place before he gets punched in the face by the cop is him remembering it the way that he wants to remember it. And he even says in the film, I hate cameras because I remember things the way I want to remember them. And it's like, okay, so there you go.
Right.
Like, it's about as overt as David Lynch will ever get as far as that's pretty overt David Lynch. Like, that's more overt
I think
than
that's
he
a
ever gets.
pretty fair assessment. I don't really disagree with that.
But that's like a very on-the-nose interpretation of the film.
I do, but I also can sort of, make an argument that he, Bill Pullman's character crosses over into, like, Black Lodge territory and emerges the other side, like some other, merged being, a different version of himself in a different reality. So, I don't know, maybe he's on death row, but actually really just trapped in the Black Lodge. Could be that. But I think that your interpretation is pretty fair. And I mean, like I said at the start of this, I don't think that this movie is so, like, enigmatic as compared to some of his other movies. I think that there's just not very much going on, and it's really minimal. It's minimalistic. And it just kind of makes it feel like you're missing something.
Well, I guess also the expectation is when you watch something David Lynch is that there is more to it, right?
Fair. And also, to your point you made earlier where you said, like, it's a bunch of different, you like it for a bunch of different things. I personally think that this movie feels like and should have been a series of, like, vignettes or shorter stories involving these different people.
I mean, it probably would have worked better.
Like, yeah, I think that would have justified the longer running time, I think. And it would have just been, you could have gotten a little bit more Robert Blake, but not, like, too much.
Is that what Mulholland Drive is like, a bunch of vignettes?
No, not really. I mean, it's a lot of stuff going on, but it's not set up in that way. But you should really check that out, too.
Sooner rather than later, huh?
But I guess we should talk about Patricia Arquette a little bit, since it's her month.
So she's naked a lot in
well,
this
yeah,
movie.
and you should never trust anything David Lynch does as sexy, because it's not sexy ever.
No, none of the... So
like,
Patricia,
the sexiest thing you get in any of David Lynch's catalog, I guess, is Audrey.
right, yeah,
That's
which
it.
is like base level generic sex.
Right. And I mean, I'm there for it, but that's it. That's the only time you can actually kind of trust it. And even still, it gets a little scary.
Like, so in this film, look, like, this is the first time that we've had any Patricia Arquette nudity this month. And it almost fills the almost fills the quota for the rest of the month. Because she is naked every other time she's on screen.
Yeah.
Like, not exaggerating. And again, like you said, there is a scene in the film where it's like Balthazar Getty watching her on screen, and she's
Like in a porn.
She's getting fucked from behind, and then later on, two women are sucking on her nipples, and I was like, I don't remember any of this. And
I honestly didn't really remember any of that either.
because it's like a weird, it's like a C plot.
See, this is the thing, is like, when I revisited this movie, I was like, I don't remember shit about this movie. Like, I could not recall really anything, aside from, the standard Robert Blake scene of, I'm in your house right now. But other than that, everything else was pretty much gone out of my brain. And now I kind of can see why. I mean, it really is just basically an outline of a movie for me, and it doesn't stick.
Well, and there's not, I mean, look, like you said, as much as this film is trying to be more, it is really, if you take the interpretation that I have coalesced from other people doing much more in-depth interpretation than I have, it is one man's fever dream trying to dissociate himself from doing something so heinous that he can't come to terms with it. Mm-hmm. And so he's imagining the second act in this film, and that's why the dialogue is so stilted, and that's why it's so bizarre tonally. All of a sudden you have Robert Loggia chasing people down in his car and threatening them like it's an action movie. And
I mean, I get that, and I know that it's all intentional. It just doesn't work for me here for whatever reason.
It's pretty indulgent. I will say that much, right?
Well, what do you think of what do you think of Patricia Arquette's performance overall in this? Because, I mean, I guess she's not given anything to do. Well, see, that's what I was going to say. In the movies that I have participated in this month, between Bringing Out the Dead, which she was really only a side character in, and then this, quite honestly, and I can't say, I mean, you did 2 other movies with her this month. And it's not that I dislike Patricia Arquette. I mean, she is in one of my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Well, she's in the one of 3 trilogy films.
Aside from that movie, anything that I've seen Patricia Arquette in, she's pretty much the same. And it's a variation of kind of just a doe-eyed, breathy, I'm here just trying to figure out my life lady.
So you're saying she never moved past Kristen from Nightmare on Elm Street 3?
I don't think so, really, no. And I'm not saying it's like she's necessarily bad at what she does. I just don't find it particularly interesting. And I feel like she's that way in every movie that I've seen her in. Granted, I have not watched the other... I've seen Stigmata, that's not true. But I've not seen Holy Matrimony.
Well, you've seen True Romance, right?
Yes, I have. And I think that she's given more to do, but I think that character is just probably one of the more interestingly written ones that she's gotten.
I will agree.
Than that, in the movies that she chooses or are chosen for her, let's be honest, by agents, I don't think that they're either they're not doing her justice, or I don't really know what happened there, because I don't think
or they're
she's
utilizing her as a character
actress.
actor.
Right. They just want her to be pretty breathy girl who helps, main character out.
Well, and look, of the films I've watched this month, which you were on 2 of them, Bringing Out the Dead and Lost Highway, and God, August is a long month, isn't it? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. This film is the one I was most excited for her performance, and it is probably the one I'm let down by the most, because she is given nothing to do. Other than be naked, really. And again, that's not me being crass. That's just, she is naked every other time she's on screen. And it's not like she's doing anything. She's just like, okay, I'm here. And it's like,
obviously that's not her fault, but it is you can argue, there's many conversations on how David Lynch and his female characters are, because on one hand, you get characters like in Twin Peaks and in Mulholland Drive, where you get more complex female characters, and then you get movies where things like Blue Velvet and this, and sometimes there's just a very obvious disconnect between the female characters in his movies and everyone else. And this is one of those movies, because she's just put there to be there, to have sex with Bill Pullman, and then to later have sex with Balthazar Getty and whoever else is in that porn. And whoever else.
Marilyn Manson is in that porn, and he gets murdered in the porn. It's
That's
like a
right.
snuff
Speaking
film
of Marilyn Manson,
snuff film turned porno.
This fucking soundtrack is representative of every pseudo metalhead I went to high school with.
So let's talk about the sound design in this movie. It is fucking insane.
Sound design's great.
It's great, but is it never not with David Lynch?
Well, no. And that's what he does. Quiet, fantastic.
And he does loud, fantastic too, especially with the Rammstein sound bites in this film that are just upsetting.
They pretty much are, yeah.
I'm not a fan of Rammstein. I don't listen to it. It's not because I don't like
some of it.
But the way he uses it in this film is fucking nuts.
Yeah, I agree. But it's so... Trent Reznor, great. David Bowie, great. Marilyn Manson, Rammstein.
David Bowie's intro-outro song for the film is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. It's great. I want more of that. But... I don't know. David Lynch's soundtracks are always so interesting to me. It's like heavy metal or Roy Orbison. That's what you get.
It is very much a mix up. It is, it's kind of like Tarantino. I'm doing something different. I'm doing my own thing. Yeah.
But I would say that yes, if this movie is compared to Mulholland Drive, I think Mulholland Drive is leaps and bounds more interesting. It's a better movie. It's the characters. There are more characters, which fine, but the main characters you actually get time with, and they do things. And they're not necessarily the greatest people either, but at least you understand more motivation, or at least they're doing more things. And yeah, I don't know. I know that people fucking love Lost Highway. I understand that. I appreciate the movie. I appreciate, it's a movie that David Lynch did, and it's fine, but it's just, it's not for me.
So let me ask you, do you think that this is David Lynch's most indulgent film that he's made?
That I've seen so far.
Because it kind of feels like it. Because you mentioned before about the whole, it's trying to be more clever than it actually is, or more kind of obfuscating what it's trying to go for than it actually needs to.
I think it tries for a lot of misdirection that I don't think it necessarily needs.
I would agree 100%. As much as I like this movie, I agree 100%.
And, yes, do a dreamy movie. That's great. That's what I'm here for, David Lynch. That's what I want. But this plot is simple. It's so simple. It's boy falls in love with mob boss's girl. Basically after the first act and Bill Pullman goes away, it just turns into a standard boy falls for mob boss's girl, and then they have to go on the run for a minute. And then she fucks him over because it's a noir. So of course she did. Like, we knew that was coming.
Well, and let's be honest here. Honestly, anytime Balthazar Getty is on screen, I kind of check out, which is unfortunate.
Oh, dear God. He's like the fucking James of this movie.
He is really, really not great.
No, he's not. He's really kind of grating to watch. And so I watched this movie with 2 other people. One had not seen it, and one had. And none of us were really fans of it at all. And yeah, like once the second half of that movie hits, and for some reason I guess we can talk real quick about all the random cameos that are in this movie for no reason.
Gary Busey's here.
Yeah, Gary Busey plays Balthazar Getty's dad.
Henry Rollins is a guard.
Right, and Richard Pryor is a sad mechanic with Jack Nance, which I'm always happy to see Jack Nance, quite honestly.
Well, it almost feels like anytime Jack Nance has to be in a David Lynch movie, right?
Well, until he can't be, but yes.
Well, let's be honest here. Is David Lynch making any more movies?
I don't know, quite honestly.
Because this was his last movie with Jack Nance, so he technically wasn't in, David Lynch's 2 other films?
Yeah. He's not David Lynch made Inland Empire, and he's not in...
He's not, 3. Straight Story, Mulholland Driver, Inland Empire. Right. But he was on all the other ones.
Right.
And for those who don't know, Jack Nance was the Eraserhead of Eraserhead.
Yes, and he's Pete in Twin Peaks,
which is a much better role, as far as I'm concerned. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Eraserhead. I understand its value, but
I love Eraserhead.
I'd much rather watch Tetsuo the Iron Man, to be perfectly honest with you, than watch Eraserhead. They're almost kind of the same movie in a way, like the Japanese version of Eraserhead.
I can see that, but I don't know. I'm sorry, Lost Highway fans and David Lynch fans out there, but I can't be on board with that one. And you know what? That's fine, because you can enjoy a director and not love everything they do.
Yeah, you don't have to love everything.
No.
Frankly, it's better if you have an opinion. I'm like, I don't know.
You don't want them to plateau. Like, give them something to, work for. You know what I mean? Don't just love fucking everything everyone does.
I don't know enough David Lynch fans to know if, this is,
This is, I think, a big one.
Okay, is it? Okay, so fair,
you are not in the minority by enjoying this movie.
I'm not in the minority.
I am.
And you know what? I'm usually in the minority about things. I'm usually you don't like Tarantino? What the fuck is wrong with you piece of shit? Take your bullshit movie opinion out of here. It's like, oh, shit.
Right, but, yeah, no.
So I'm not in the minority here. Interesting, okay.
Yep.
But Robert Blake is fantastic, right?
But he is, yes. He's fantastic in everything, every moment. And honestly, that whole, shot of the barn. There's a lot of things that I do appreciate of this movie. Some of the cinematography, I do really enjoy. The shots of the barn blowing up in reverse are, I think, very beautifully done. The sound design is fantastic. I mean, the people in the roles, I guess they do what they can with what they're given, because they're not really given much to do. Robert Loggia hams it up, which fine, and I'm sure he was directed to do that.
And again, if you believe the way the second half of the film, or the second act of the film is played out, he's doing that because in Bill Pullman's character's mind, he's in a movie of his own making. So it's, Robert Loggia has to be the hammed up villain of the second act.
Yeah.
Yeah, as much as I do like this movie, there are a lot of problems with it. I'm not going to pretend like there's not. It is not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination.
I did think it was interesting to note in that video interview that we watched that he mentioned that someone allegedly did come to his door one day and through the speaker box told him Dink Laurent is dead, and he had no idea what exactly that was referring to. So supposedly that happened in real life, and that's pretty freaky if it did. He also said that there was a lot of O.J. Simpson influence on this, and I can see that, the idea of a husband who kills his wife and then somehow manages to go day to day and do the same things that you would normally do despite having murdered somebody. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Right. But, yeah, I mean, this movie and the way he talks about it very much just feels like it's a couple things slapped together and they said, sure, let's make a movie. it feels very much like an experiment, and it feels like an outline. And I think when you watch Mulholland Drive, you're going to feel a little bit more
of a full film.
Yes. Yeah. Like you'll see what exactly I mean there.
Well, like I said, I mean, I really wish this was more the Bill Pullman and Patricia Arquette show and not the Balthazar
Getty show.
God. I cannot impress enough upon you, the listener, how much I don't like Balthazar Getty.
I mean,
as much as I like this film, he's awful. He's been in a couple... I mean, look, he's part of the Getty family. I mean, the Getty family.
Right.
Like, you know, like, why are you even an actor? Like, you don't even have to do anything. You don't have to do anything as far as I'm concerned. You know, just kind of live your life as part of one of the richest families in the world, man. Like,
because that means you can do whatever you want, though.
That's true. So you can go be an actor. And be
yeah, he was like, wasn't he in that fucking, like, Lord of the Flies movie? Came out in the 90s?
Never seen it.
I think he was in that. He does have a role in the new Twin Peaks series.
Okay, I knew he was in the new Twin Peaks.
But only as a couple parts, I do remember, and I think he gets killed, and that's fine.
Oh, good. Yeah, every scene that he is in is so stilted and bad. And again, it's intentional if you think about the film the way that Lynch probably intended. And again, like you said, David Lynch has gone on and said, well, I don't want any meaning in my films, which is good because, I mean, again, if you don't want to draw...
It's not that he doesn't want any meaning in his films. He doesn't want to tell you what it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, as much as I like this movie, there are a lot of problems. But I like it enough to get past some of them. But rewatching it and finally talking about it, like, the Patricia Arquette problem of this film is more apparent than last time, especially considering how this is Arquette August, so I'm focusing on her performance more. And yeah, she's not given anything to do. Like, we haven't talked about her enough this month because some of the films we've talked about her in, they just don't do enough with her.
Well, and I think that's a trend. I mean...
Yeah, I would agree. Holy Matrimony is the only film this month where I'm like, she did something... Holy Matrimony and True Romance, and when we did the True Romance podcast, if you want to go back and listen to that one, we barely talked about her, but that's because Father Malone has a personal connection to True Romance that was more important to talk about than Patricia Arquette, because again, kind of doesn't do much in that movie. Her character is different than the one in this film, but
she still just kind of plays a version of like a manic pixie dream girl, where she's like there to just assist the man in need.
And that's kind of what it is in this film too.
Yeah. I mean, she's still playing him, which is about the only difference. I mean, but because that's where you fall into the noir. And that's the thing, is this whole movie is very predictable. And obviously it is, because I think it was much more a focus on visual elements and then I think story and narrative. But even still, it's just there too. But I mean, I'm looking at Patricia Arquette's very extensive filmography, a lot of TV.
She has an Oscar. She won an Academy Award.
I have not seen Boyhood, so I can't attest to that, actually.
Yeah, you know why I haven't watched that movie? Because that movie honestly sounds boring as fuck.
It's very long.
Is it like 5 hours or some shit?
It's 2 hours and 45 minutes.
I have nothing
longer than this movie.
I have nothing against films that are long.
I don't either, but they need to be interesting.
Well, yeah, Boyhood doesn't sound like something I have any interest in watching.
No, I don't. It's just.
But again, she's great in Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Yeah. And she's given more to do in that. I mean, you know, she's
better than the actress who's recast as her in the next film.
Well, yes, that's very true.
So there's that. Was the actress in the next one Tuesday Night or something? And she's
I believe so, yeah.
Oh God, she's so bad. She's just.
You would have done a Patricia Arquette episode of Tales from the Crypt, I think.
Yes, and you know what? That episode is uncomfortable to watch.
Oh, which one is that?
It's the one where it's like the scarecrow, and then like she's like a drifter, and she shows up on the farm, and like the husband, it's a husband and wife on the farm, and the husband's like trying to fuck Patricia Arquette.
Oh, right.
And there's like a lot of really awkward, like Patricia Arquette half naked, with like her ass hanging out. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, oh God, like Look, I will not deny Patricia Arquette is a very attractive woman, but, like, why was it so... What was the fascination with making her half naked in everything that I've seen this month?
That's just a fascination for most things in the 90s, especially for Tales from the Crypt, let's be honest.
That's true. That's very true. Very true. But again, that's like a pulp comic book.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's intentional.
Yeah, in this film, though, like...
In this film, I don't know.
David Lynch's erotica...
It feels very unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, women sucking on her nipples, her being naked on the beach with Bill Pullman and Balthazar Getty, like, oh my god, like, this, tone it down a little bit. Like, I get it. I get that you're maybe trying to explore that kind of sexuality and erotica side of things, but... Boy, she doesn't.
Well, and especially when it's such extent, like long and for the most part very quiet scenes. I mean, or on the opposite, super heavy, like loud music, and you're just like, oh god, I don't know, I don't really know which is more uncomfortable.
The scene where she strips in front of Robert Loggia, down to her
bad.
Like underwear, is just it's uncomfortable.
I will say the one thing I do like is the dude doing a header into that glass table. That's a pretty good hit.
That's a very good practical effect from David Lynch. It is a fantastic practical effect.
And hey, David Lynch, when he gets his little moments of scary and horror, he does it right. And I mean, Robert Blake is terrifying, and that moment of gore is awesome. So kudos there. I would like to see like what he doesn't do genre specific. I guess David Lynch is his own genre at this point.
He's very Lynchian, would you say?
Yes, he's his own genre at this point. But if he did an all out like horror movie, it probably would be 3 hours long, and a lot of people would probably hate it, but I would totally sit through it.
Would you go on the record and say that the best David Lynch film is just Twin Peaks Season 3, which is one long movie?
No, I would not, but it's
really?
Close.
Okay. Because like a lot of people I know that love David Lynch are like, that's the best movie he's done. Season 3 of Twin Peaks.
No, I enjoy it. I think that's... I mean, yeah, obviously better than Season 2. And I was super happy to see it back, but no, I don't consider that.
There's honestly still part of me that can't believe it actually came back.
I know, I said I need to rewatch it.
Like, there's a part of me that's just like, I can't believe the show actually came back for a third season.
Yep, and David Bowie was a teacup.
He sure was, wasn't he? So, what would you give Lost Highway out of 5?
I'm going to give it a 2.5.
For the first David Lynch movie for this podcast. Oh, that's such a bummer.
I know.
See, now
but I'm just not a fan. And now I can finally like put that on my letterbox because I've been withholding all of this information because I
You think I was going to go snoop and check it out and be like...
No, I just didn't want us to have like that conversation before we did the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, I think that it's best to air everything out for the listening choice of the audience, sure. But, you know, I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't like it.
Yeah, no, it's not my favorite. And I do like, and the thing is, it's hilarious that we do the one, like...
Right. We're doing David Lynch, but the one movie you don't like.
I think overwhelmingly, I like most of his stuff more so than I don't. But I do admit that there are things that I don't like, and I can totally understand why people don't like anything. Why there are people that don't like anything that he's done. I get it. But for me, this is just like, nah, sorry.
That's kind of... I'm surprised. I am surprised, but not super surprised, because you were very reserved when we were talking about it. You were just like, my notes are compiled. I was like, oh no, did she not like this movie? I'm going to give this...
And it's not that I don't hate it either. It's not one of those movies where I like vehemently am angry about. It's not for me.
So I'm going to give this film a 4 out of 5.
Mm.
But again, there are things I don't like. That's why I'm not... Getting a 5 out of 5 seems a little... I mean, look, I'm not going to give a 5...
give 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I don't give 5 out of 5s like candy, and I'm definitely not going to give it to a film that has Balthazar Getty in it, because fuck that. He's not good. I mean, like, I can't impress upon you, the listener, enough. Balthazar Getty is really bad in this movie. And, like, he probably should not be acting? I don't know. He just comes off very stilted and unnatural in his acting ability, which, again, hey, not everybody can be, I don't know, name your most organic actor out there. So, let's take a break, and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
From Hollywood, California, where stars make dreams and dreams make stars.
Do you want to see?
You have a new role to play, I hear.
Up for a roll.
No. I definitely heard that you have it.
Action.
Damn! This sounds like dialogue from our script.
Cut it. What the bloody hell's going on?
Is this good? Oh, please.
Our producers know the history of this film, and they have taken it on themselves not to pass on that information to us. Purposefully.
Something's wrong. Do you love me? It's a story that happened yesterday, but I know it's tomorrow.
Don't you remember anything? How it was?
That's right, on the next Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about another David Lynch movie, so hold on to your seats, boyos, because it is our 300th episode. That's right, 300 episodes of the Culture Cast. We're going to be talking about Inland Empire, David Lynch's final film? Last film, at least.
Yeah,
last
so
is in
that's
the
like
last
what?
one that he made, not the last one.
An hour per 100 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. Will David Lynch make another movie? We don't know. Is this the last movie that you can watch of his? It sure is. We are going to be joined by you, Jess, Father Malone, Mike White, and maybe even Matt Campagna to talk about this film. Look, it's going to be crowded. There's going to be a lot of us. Yeah, party cast. But at the same time, it's our 300th episode. I tried to get as many familiar faces back. Some people I didn't invite back. I'm not going to say who, but there's a reason we didn't invite them back. But everybody that's been here for the last couple months and for the last couple of years, they're here. We're going to be talking about Inland Empire. It's going to be a good podcast. 300th episode. Can't believe we've even made it that far. Inland Empire, David Lynch. A film that I personally love. I don't know if everyone else loves it as much as I do. Probably not. Probably
This might
not.
be the second David Lynch movie I don't like.
So we're talking about David Lynch again, Jess. And oh, by the way, you don't like this movie either. Oh, shit.
And to everyone who's going to look, if anybody looks me up on this podcast and they see that I have a Twin Peaks tattoo, they're going to be like, oh, you're such a fucking liar. You don't like it.
Stop lying to everyone. You fucking hate David Lynch, and you know you hate David Lynch. Oh, shit. So until then, until the 300th episode of the Culture Cast, where can people find you, Jess?
You can find me on Twitter at writer Jess Byard. And you can find me on many episodes of the Culture Cast. You can also find me on our other show, the One Season Show, where we talk about television shows that only manage to last one season. We are right smack dab in the middle of Werewolf 1987. Second episode just dropped, right?
Yeah, it's true. And it's otherwise known as The Incredible Hulk, but replace the Hulk with a werewolf.
Right.
And cut the episodes down half.
Right. But we're halfway through it.
It's true. We are halfway through it.
And yeah, that's pretty much it.
And you can find me on Twitter at casualty_Chris. You can find the podcast on Twitter at The Culture Cast. You can find us on the internet at, not at, www.culturecast. This is www anymore. Culturecast.com is where you can find the podcast. Head on over there. Look us up. Give us some money if that's your thing. If not, I get it. You want to make me watch something that you really think is funny? Look, we've already done a podcast on The Room. I'm not going to watch it again. I watch it because I like it, not because someone else tells me to watch it. If you want to make me watch something fucking stupid, go right ahead. I'll rope somebody into being on that podcast. Though, to be fair, I pick stupid movies on my own. You don't have to do it for me. Big thanks, as always, to _91 for Thunderous, which is the intro outro music for the Culture Cast. And to you, Jess, I'm sorry we didn't do a David Lynch movie that you like.
It's fine. We'll do Mulholland Drive since you've never seen it. We're going to have to just make that a thing.
Because we haven't done it on the podcast, we can do it eventually.
Exactly.
It's not like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which I've already done, so we can't double dip. So we'll catch you on the next Culture Cast.